A civilization vanished without a single written word to explain itself. The Olmecs, hailed as the mother culture of the Americas, built their world in the steamy jungles of Mexico over 3,000 years ago. They carved heads from solid stone so large they dwarf buses, then buried them with purpose. They plotted cities with celestial precision and then simply walked away, leaving behind a legacy of pure enigma. By the end of this journey, you will hold the keys to 25 of their most enduring and baffling secrets. We will confront silent stone giants and ponder a script no one can read. What does it take for an entire people to simply fade from history? Our journey begins with the very ground they stood upon, because the first and perhaps greatest mystery of the Olmecs is their own beginning. Where did this sophisticated culture, capable of moving multi-ton stones and planning vast ceremonial centers, actually come from? The answer is not written in any history book, because when they emerged, history in the Americas had barely begun. The archaeological record in the humid Gulf Coast of Mexico shows something startling, a society that appears in many ways fully formed. We do not see the slow, gradual progression from simple villages to complex cities that we find in other cradles of civilization. Instead, we find La Venta, San Lorenzo, and Tres Zapotes, centers with massive earthen pyramids, intricate stone carvings, and sophisticated art seemingly springing from the jungle floor. This sudden appearance has fueled a century of debate and some truly extraordinary theories. One persistent idea suggests transoceanic contact, that voyagers from across the Atlantic or the Pacific brought the seeds of civilization to the Olmecs. Proponents often point to the features of the colossal stone heads with their broad noses and full lips, suggesting a resemblance to peoples from Africa. Others see potential links to the art styles of ancient China or other parts of Asia. These theories are captivating, stories of intrepid ancient explorers that rewrite our understanding of the world. But mainstream archaeology remains deeply skeptical. The evidence for such long-distance contact in this era is at best circumstantial and hotly contested. Most scholars argue for an indigenous origin, that the Olmec genius was a homegrown phenomenon, the brilliant result of local cultures in Mesoamerica reaching a critical point of innovation and social organization. They point to earlier, simpler sites in the region that may represent the Olmec's own ancestors, a pre-Olmec culture slowly developing the skills that would later explode into grandeur. Yet, even within this consensus, there is a frank admission: the gaps are wide. The transition from those potential precursor villages to the staggering achievements at San Lorenzo is not fully mapped. There is a leap in the record, a silent period where the blueprint for their civilization was drawn, but the parchment itself is lost. So we are left with a foundational puzzle. Did a great teacher arrive from a distant shore, or did a group of local people, looking at their rivers and their stones, simply invent a new world? The truth may be a combination, a spark of local ingenuity ignited by ideas that traveled along forgotten routes we have yet to discover. This mystery of origin colors every other question we have about them, because if we cannot find their starting point, how can we ever truly trace their path? That leap from obscurity to grandeur is made manifest in stone, in the single most iconic image of this lost world. Scattered across the Olmec heartland, 17 colossal heads stare out from the past with an expression of silent, unmovable authority. To stand before one is an encounter that defies simple description. Carved from single blocks of volcanic basalt, the largest of these heads towers over 3 meters tall and weighs more than 20 tons, the equivalent of 2 full-grown African elephants. Their features are unmistakably individual, from stern frowns to calm, knowing gazes, each wearing a distinctive helmet that looks less like protective gear and more like a ceremonial headdress. But the first question that strikes any observer is not about their expression, it is about logistics. How did a people without the wheel, without draft animals, move a 20-ton block of stone over distances of 100 kilometers or more from the Tuxtla Mountains quarries to their ceremonial centers? The answer is a testament to raw human ingenuity and communal effort. Archaeologists believe the Olmecs used a combination of rollers, likely made from logs, and immense rope crafted from local fibers. They would have leveraged river transport wherever possible, perhaps floating the rough-hewn blocks on rafts during the rainy season, a perilous undertaking that required an intimate understanding of their environment. This was not a casual undertaking, it was a monumental investment of labor and time, a society-wide project that speaks to a powerful, unifying purpose. So who warranted such an immortalization? The prevailing theory is that these are portraits of powerful Olmec rulers, each head commissioned to commemorate a specific leader, perhaps upon their death, to project their enduring presence and authority over the community. The unique helmets could signify achievements in warfare or the sacred ball game. Yet other scholars propose they represent deified ancestors or even gods of a celestial realm. Their stony gaze a permanent conduit between the earthly and the divine. The mystery deepens with their final treatment. These heads, objects of such immense effort and probable veneration, were not always left on proud display. At sites like San Lorenzo, they were found carefully arranged in lines or groups, and then, centuries later, intentionally buried by the Olmecs themselves in what appears to be a ritual act of retirement. Why would a culture bury its own monuments? Was it an act of respect, a ceremonial closing of an era, or a deliberate attempt to hide powerful symbols from enemies or even from the future? Each massive face, therefore, is a locked vault. It holds the secrets of an individual's identity, the reason for its creation, and the profound cultural logic that led to its deliberate interment, all sealed behind lips of stone that will never speak. Their mastery of stone speaks of immense physical power, but their true sophistication lies in the invisible architecture of their minds. To label the Olmecs as merely a Stone Age culture is a profound misunderstanding, one that crumbles before the evidence of their intellectual world. They were not just moving mountains, they were mapping the heavens and inventing mathematical concepts that would echo for millennia. One of their most staggering gifts to posterity is the concept of zero. While often credited to later Maya mathematicians, the roots of this abstract idea, the placeholder that revolutionized calculation, appear in Olmec glyphs and, most importantly, in the structure of their long count calendar. This was not a simple tally of days, it was a grand, cyclical chronology designed to track vast expanses of time, and such a system cannot function without a symbol for nothingness, for the absence of value. The Olmecs, it seems, understood the void as a number, a conceptual leap that many great civilizations across the globe took centuries longer to achieve. This celestial thinking was carved into the very earth. At their great city of Venta, the entire urban landscape was a cosmic diagram. The central complex, with its towering clay pyramid and sprawling ceremonial plaza, is meticulously aligned not to the points of the compass but to celestial events. Key structures line up with the setting sun on specific solstices, and the arrangement of massive stone mosaics and offerings beneath the plazas suggest a deep, ritual observation of the stars and planets. They were plotting the movements of the cosmos and anchoring their sacred space to its rhythms, implying a class of priest astronomers who could predict these cycles with precision. Their genius was equally grounded in practical, earthly mastery. Venta, built on an island in a swamp, is a marvel of early engineering. They constructed complex drainage systems using buried, U-shaped stone troughs, managing water flow in a flood-prone environment with a skill that would not be out of place centuries later. They moved millions of cubic feet of earth to shape their pyramids and platforms, all without metal tools or beasts of burden. This was more than brute force, it was large-scale, coordinated city planning, a vision executed over generations. So here lies the third great mystery. How did this constellation of advanced knowledge, mathematics, astronomy, and civil engineering coalesce so completely and so early? Their achievements were not isolated flashes of insight, but interconnected parts of a sophisticated worldview. It forces us to ask what catalyzed such a holistic intellectual explosion. Was there a lost precursor, a teacher culture whose traces have been utterly swallowed by the jungle? Or does the Olmec story tell us something more fundamental about human potential, that when conditions align, the leap from simplicity to complexity can be breathtakingly swift? Their silent stones are not just monuments, they are testaments to a mind that saw order in the stars, value in nothing, and possibility in a swamp. But a mind that brilliant could not save its greatest city from a shadow. While Venta would later rise to prominence, the first crown jewel of the Olmec world was San Lorenzo. Perched on a plateau overlooking the Coatzacoalcos River basin, by 1200 before Common Era, it was a thriving epicenter of power and artistry. Its rulers reshaped the very landscape, carving the hilltop into a massive, artificial plateau with vast terraces and ridges, an earthen canvas for their grandeur. It was here that many of the earliest colossal heads were first displayed, alongside stunning altars and finely wrought jade figurines. San Lorenzo was the beating heart of an early golden age, a testament to what the Olmecs could achieve. And then, around 900 before Common Era, the heart stopped beating. The city did not fade slowly, it collapsed with a violence that still echoes in the stones. Archaeologists uncovered a scene of deliberate and systematic destruction. The colossal heads, those symbols of supreme authority, were toppled and mutilated. Their faces were gouged, their features smashed. Altars and other monuments were similarly defaced, their symbolic power ritually broken. This was not random vandalism or the ravages of time. It was a targeted act, a purposeful erasure of the old order. The city itself was largely abandoned, its population scattering, leaving the grand platforms to be swallowed by the jungle. What cataclysm could cause a people to turn on their own sacred icons with such fury? The theories are as dramatic as the evidence. One points to internal revolt, a popular uprising against a ruling class that had grown too oppressive. The mutilation of the rulers' stone portraits would be the ultimate act of rebellion, a symbolic killing of their power. Another suggests an invasion by a foreign enemy, perhaps a rival Olmec group or a people from the surrounding highlands, who sought to humiliate the San Lorenzo elite by destroying the very symbols of their legitimacy. Environmental disaster is a strong contender too. The Olmecs relied heavily on their river systems for transport and agriculture. A major shift in the course of the Coatzacoalcos River, or a period of severe drought or flooding, could have shattered the economic foundation of the city, leading to famine, social unrest, and ultimately a loss of faith in the rulers who could no longer command the heavens or the waters. Some scholars propose a more subtle shift, a change in the crucial trade routes for jade and other prestige goods. If the economic lifeblood of San Lorenzo was diverted elsewhere, its power would have withered, making it vulnerable to attack or simply causing its people to leave for more prosperous lands. The truth is, we may never know the precise spark. What we witness at San Lorenzo is the stark reality of a civilization's fragility. It shows that even at their peak, the Olmecs were not immune to the forces that topple empires, conflict, climate, and the precarious balance of power. The fall of this first great capital marks a pivotal, dark mystery, the end of an era, forcing us to wonder if their greatest achievements also sowed the seeds of their own destruction. Yet from the ashes of San Lorenzo's violent end, a different kind of artifact would emerge, one that promised not just power but speech. In the late 1990s, road builders quarrying gravel from an ancient Olmec site known as Cascajal in the state of Veracruz unearthed a seemingly unremarkable block of serpentine stone. It was about the size and shape of a standard laptop computer, worn smooth by centuries of river water. but when archaeologists turned it over, they were met with a sight that sent shockwaves through the study of ancient America. Its surface was incised with 62 finely carved symbols arranged in clear horizontal rows. This was the Cascadal block, and it dared to propose an answer to one of our most haunting questions: could the Olmecs write? The glyphs themselves are a mesmerizing puzzle. Some are instantly recognizable depictions of a fish, an insect, an ear of corn, or what looks like a throne. Others are abstract, a series of dots, bars, and shapes that defy easy identification. They are not haphazard scratches. Their arrangement suggests a deliberate sequence, a text meant to be read in a specific order. For many scholars, this was the Holy Grail, the first true evidence of a writing system in the Americas, predating the earliest known Maya script by several centuries. The implications are staggering. If this is Olmec writing, it means they were not just master builders and astronomers, but also chroniclers, capable of recording history, law, poetry, or divine incantations. It would confirm they possessed the ultimate tool of complex civilization, the ability to transmit ideas across time and space without the presence of the speaker. The block could be a royal decree, a religious hymn, or even a simple inventory list, but its message would fundamentally reshape our understanding of their intellectual world. Yet not everyone is convinced. A fierce and ongoing debate divides experts. The skeptics, including some of the world's leading epigraphers, point to the block's isolation. It was found out of any clear archaeological context, making its dating less certain. More critically, they argue the symbols, while ordered, show no clear repetitive patterns or grammatical structure that would define a true writing system. Could it be, they ask, simply a collection of powerful symbols, a shaman's ritual reference stone, or a set of clan insignia, rather than a phonetic script encoding language? This is the core of the enigma. The Cascadal block sits at a precipice between proto-writing and full literacy. It may represent the brilliant, experimental dawn of written communication in the New World, a system that would later be refined and expanded by the Maya into their famed hieroglyphs. Or it may be a magnificent dead end, a local code that never evolved beyond its first principles. Every attempt at decipherment has hit a wall of silence. Without a Rosetta Stone, without a bilingual text to use as a key, the 62 glyphs remain mute. We can guess at what some symbols represent, but we cannot hear the sentences they form. So this palm-sized slab of green stone holds a dual power. It is both the most promising clue and the most frustrating lock. It whispers that the Olmecs might have had a voice, that their kings and priests may have spoken to us directly across the millennia, only for the specific frequency of their language to be lost in the static of time. The block does not just ask if the Olmecs could write, it asks us how much we are willing to listen to a silence that feels so full of words. If the Cascadal block is a whisper of language, then beneath the plazas of Venta are screams of devotion. This second great capital did not just build upwards towards the sky, it built downwards into the very soul of the earth. Across the sacred island, archaeologists have uncovered not tombs, but something perhaps more mysterious: vast and meticulously arranged offerings buried deep below the surface, never meant to be seen again by human eyes. The most staggering of these are the massive offerings. Picture a pit dug perhaps 15 feet deep. Within it, workers laid down a floor of thousands of serpentine blocks, each carefully shaped and fitted together in a perfect geometric rectangle. On top of this stone carpet, they placed layers of colored clay, and then they buried it all, sealing it under the earth. The labor is mind-numbing, thousands of man-hours spent creating a beautiful pattern only to consign it to permanent darkness. This was not one isolated act, but a repeated ritual. Elsewhere, they buried caches of priceless jade, exquisite celts, and figurines, often arranged in symbolic scenes or placed in containers made of stone. One famous offering contained 16 delicate figurines made of jade and serpentine, standing in a semicircle as if in conference. facing 6 upright jade celts, their meeting frozen in time under tons of soil. The question that haunts every discovery is why? Why create such magnificent, valuable displays only to hide them forever? The theories point to a cosmology where the earth itself was alive and sacred. These offerings may have been dedications to gods of the underworld, payments or gifts to powerful chthonic forces to ensure the stability of the world above. By burying them at cardinal points or beneath major structures, they were literally consecrating the ground, charging their ceremonial space with spiritual energy drawn from the deep earth. Another possibility is ritual wealth disposal. In many ancient societies, displaying and then destroying or burying great wealth was a way for elites to demonstrate their power, to show that their authority was so absolute they could take objects of immense value and simply remove them from the human economy. It was a performance of potency, a way to solidify status by proving they could communicate directly with the realms that governed fertility and life. But perhaps the most profound interpretation is that these caches were not just gifts but seeds. The Olmecs may have seen the earth as a generative womb. By planting these carefully arranged stones and jewels, they were performing a kind of sympathetic magic, sowing the seeds of order, abundance, and continuity into the land itself, ensuring that their city and their civilization would continue to bear fruit. The sheer scale of the labor tells us this was not a casual act of faith, but a central, essential pillar of their existence. It reveals a people who believed the visible world was propped up by an invisible one, and that maintaining that balance required not just prayer but profound, tangible sacrifice. In the silent, dark soil of Venta, we find a civilization speaking in a language of buried treasure, telling us that their greatest treasures were not for display but for the gods of the deep. This deep communion with the earth hints at a world where boundaries were fluid, where the human and the wild could merge into something terrifying and divine. Across countless Olmec artifacts, from tiny jade pendants to massive stone altars, one image dominates their spiritual art, a creature both human and beast known to us as the word jaguar. Its features are a haunting fusion, the powerful, snarling mouth of the great American cat, often with prominent fangs, combined with the body of a human infant, typically with a floppy, lifeless pose and a distinctively cleft or V-shaped head. The face is frequently contorted into what we perceive as a snarl or a cry, with a downturned mouth that seems to express agony or supernatural fury. This was not a casual artistic choice, it was a central, obsessive icon that permeated their culture for centuries. But what or who does this unsettling hybrid represent? The mystery of the word jaguar is the mystery of the Olmec soul, and scholars have been wrestling with its meaning for generations. One compelling theory sees it as the primary deity of an Olmec pantheon, a storm or earth god born from a mythical union between a jaguar and a woman. The cleft head could symbolize a split in the sky, the source of lightning and rain, making this being a fearsome controller of fertility and destruction. In this view, the word jaguar is not just a symbol, it is a god to be appeased. Another school of thought interprets the image through the lens of shamanic transformation. The jaguar, as the apex predator of the Mesoamerican jungle, was seen as a creature of immense power, able to move between the canopy, the forest floor, and the underworld. Olmec rulers or priests, through ritual, trance, or the use of sacred substances, may have believed they could assume the spirit of the jaguar, gaining its strength, ferocity, and vision. The infant-like body might then represent the shaman in a vulnerable, transitional state during this spiritual journey. Others propose the word jaguar is a mythological ancestor, a founding being from whom Olmec rulers derived their right to rule, with the cleft head representing a sacred mountain or a corn kernel, linking them directly to the generative forces of nature. It could also be a symbol of royal power itself, where the ruler embodies the dual nature of the creature, the civilized human leader who also possesses the untamed, fearsome authority of the Jungle King. What makes this icon so elusive and so different from later Mesoamerican cultures is the lack of a clear, defined pantheon around it. We do not have Olmec equivalents of the Mayas' detailed pantheon of gods of corn, death, and rain, each with distinct names and roles. Instead, we have this one potent, polymorphous image that seems to contain multitudes. It is a god, a transformation, an ancestor, and a political emblem all at once. This is the core of the seventh mystery. The word jaguar defines the Olmec spiritual world precisely because it obscures it. It refuses to be pinned to a single meaning. It is a symbol of profound ambiguity, reflecting a world view where categories we take for granted, human and animal, ruler and god, life and death, were not separate realms but interconnected layers of a single sacred reality. To understand the word jaguar is to stand at the edge of that reality, listening to the distant growl of a meaning we can sense but never fully tame. This profound spiritual world was given physical form in an object of luminous green perfection. The Olmecs were obsessed with jade, a stone they carved into objects of breathtaking beauty and power. They fashioned it into polished celts that gleamed like frozen water, into delicate ear spools and pendants, and into haunting, lifelike masks that may have covered the faces of the dead or adorned sacred bundles. For them, this stone was far more than a decorative luxury. It was a sacred substance, its cool, translucent green likely symbolizing water, maize sprouts, and the very essence of life and fertility. But this reverence is shadowed by a profound logistical mystery, because the Olmec heartland in the Mexican Gulf Coast possesses no natural sources of high-quality jade. The nearest known deposits, the only ones in all of Mesoamerica, lie in the rugged Motagua River valley of Guatemala, a distance of hundreds of miles over some of the most forbidding terrain on the continent, through dense jungle and across towering mountain ranges. So how did this sacred stone, in such massive quantities, find its way into the workshops of San Lorenzo and La Venta? The answer reveals an Olmec world far more expansive than their ceremonial centers suggest. They were not isolated geniuses, but the hub of a vast, intricate trade network that stretched across ancient Mexico and beyond. Acquiring jade would have required either direct, organized expeditions to the Motagua Valley, a monumental undertaking involving guides, porters, and diplomats, or more likely, a complex chain of exchange through intermediary cultures. Olmec traders or their partners would have moved the raw jade northward, likely along river routes and coastal paths, trading it for other valued goods like obsidian, feathers, cacao, or perhaps Olmec-crafted prestige items. This was not simple barter. It was a sophisticated economic system that moved ideas as much as materials. The presence of Olmec-style carvings and motifs in distant regions like the highlands of Mexico and along the Pacific coast of Guatemala suggests that this trade was accompanied by a powerful cultural influence, a spreading of artistic styles and possibly religious concepts from the Gulf Coast core. The jade itself tells a story of incredible skill and value addition. A rough block from Guatemala, worth little in its raw state, would be transformed by Olmec artisans into an object of immense spiritual and political worth. A finished jade celt, with its mirror-like polish and symbolic form, became a potent object of status, likely used in rituals or as a marker of elite authority. This control over the source, transformation, and distribution of such a coveted material would have been a primary source of power for Olmec rulers. Yet the precise mechanics of this network are lost. Were there dedicated merchant classes who spoke multiple languages? Were there fortified way stations along the route? Did the Olmecs exert direct political control over the jade sources, or was their relationship with the peoples of the Motagua Valley one of respectful exchange? The silent journey of each green stone from a Guatemalan riverbed to an Olmec tomb is a testament to a connected, vibrant ancient America, one where the roots of commerce and culture ran deep, long before any written record thought to document them. While their jade connected them to distant lands, the Olmecs also sought meaning in the deepest, most hidden places of the earth. Far from the open plazas of their cities, in the cool, perpetual darkness of remote caves in the mountains of Guerrero, they left a very different kind of masterpiece. The caves of Juxtlahuaca and Oxtitlan hold some of the most spectacular and mysterious art in the ancient Americas, vast polychrome paintings that transform the rock walls into a canvas for the spirit world. To enter these spaces is to step into a sacred gallery untouched for millennia. The paintings are breathtaking in their preservation and complexity. At Oxtitlan, a monumental figure dominates the ceiling of a rock shelter. Painted in vivid red and black, this imposing being sits upon a stylized jaguar throne, wearing an elaborate bird headdress that radiates power. In one hand, he holds a curious trident-like object, a symbol that continues to defy definitive interpretation. The scene is framed by serpents and other motifs, creating a composition of startling sophistication. Elsewhere, in the deeper cavern of Juxtlahuaca, the walls come alive with processions of figures, animals, and abstract designs, all rendered with a confident, flowing line and a palette of reds, yellows, blacks, and whites. The technical skill is undeniable, requiring pigments prepared from minerals and plants, brushes, scaffolding, and the ability to work for long hours in near-total darkness, illuminated only by flickering torches or oil lamps. This very location is the heart of the mystery. Why go to such extraordinary effort to create magnificent art in a place where almost no one would ever see it? The answer lies in the Olmec conception of the cosmos. Caves were not mere geological features, they were sacred portals, the literal entrances to the underworld, a realm teeming with ancestral spirits, deities, and the raw, generative forces of the earth. By painting in these spaces, the artists were not decorating a wall, they were interacting directly with the other side. The paintings likely served as permanent fixtures for powerful rituals. The dominant figure on the jaguar throne could be a depiction of a mythic founder king, a shaman in a state of transformation, or an underworld deity itself. The trident may be a weapon, a scepter of authority, or a ritual tool for summoning spiritual energy. Some scholars see these scenes as records of actual ceremonies performed in the caves, frozen moments where human priests communed with the supernatural. Others believe they represent visionary landscapes, maps of the spirit world as seen by those in trance states, perhaps induced by ritual fasting or sacred plants. The remote, difficult-to-access nature of the caves was not a drawback, it was essential. This was art not for public acclaim but for divine audience. The act of creation itself may have been the ritual, a form of pilgrimage and devotion where the journey into the earthly darkness was a metaphor for the shaman's descent into the spiritual unknown. Each stroke of pigment was a prayer, a contract, or a conjuration, meant to appease the powers of the deep or to draw their vitality into the world above. So these vibrant paintings, hidden from the sun, are the opposite of the buried offerings at La Venta. One is a beautiful secret given to the earth, the other is a vivid vision offered to the rock itself. Together, they tell us that for the Olmecs, the most profound conversations happened not in the light but in the dark. That spiritual power, once painted in hidden caves, was also carved into objects meant to be held and wielded. Among the most stunning of these is an artifact known as the Kuntz axe, a masterpiece of Olmec artistry that perfectly embodies the enigma of their ceremonial world. Crafted from a single, flawless piece of translucent blue-green jade, it is shaped like a ceremonial axe head, but its surface is dominated by the haunting, deeply carved face of the word jaguar. The broad, snarling mouth with prominent fangs is unmistakable, yet the overall polish is so perfect, the curves so fluid that the object seems to glow with an inner light. But what was its purpose? This is no simple tool. Its blade is not sharpened for cutting wood. The mystery of its function opens a window into a world where objects were bridges to the supernatural. Some scholars believe it was a true ritual axe used symbolically by priests to sever spiritual bonds or to sacrifice not animals, but perhaps offerings of precious materials. Others see it as a supreme symbol of political and religious authority, a scepter held by rulers during ceremonies to visibly manifest their connection to the word jaguar spirit, their right to rule literally carved in sacred stone. Another compelling theory casts it as a dedicatory object, similar to the massive offerings at Venta, but on a portable scale. It may have been a gift to a temple or a deity, an object of immense value willingly taken out of circulation to earn divine favor. Perhaps the most intriguing idea is that it was a transformative tool for shamans. By gazing into its polished surface or holding it during trance rituals, a priest might have sought to channel the essence of the creature depicted, to become the word jaguar and journey into the spirit realm. The Kunt's axe, in all its beauty, refuses to give a single answer. It likely served multiple sacred roles, its meaning shifting with the ritual and the hand that held it. This ambiguity extends to a suite of other perplexing ceremonial items found in Olmec contexts. Sharpened stingray spines, often made of precious jade or obsidian, are frequently discovered in elite burials and caches. Their purpose, while grim, is widely interpreted through later Mesoamerican practices. These spines were almost certainly used in acts of ritual bloodletting. For the Olmecs, human blood was considered the most potent offering, the sacred life force that could nourish the gods and maintain the cosmic order. A ruler or priest might have pierced their own tongue, ears, or genitals with such a spine, collecting the blood on strips of paper or bark cloth to be burned as sacred smoke, a direct communion with the divine. The act was not one of mere pain, but of ultimate piety and power, proving one's commitment to sustaining the world itself. Equally fascinating are the concave mirrors the Olmecs crafted from highly polished iron ore like magnetite. These were not for vanity. In the right light, they could start fires, a seemingly magical feat, but their primary ritual use was likely for divination and conjuring. A shaman, perhaps in a darkened space or under the influence of ritual substances, could gaze into the distorted, reflective surface to see visions, to scry for messages from ancestors or gods. The mirror might have been used to reflect sunlight in ceremonial patterns, or to create dazzling, disorienting effects during rituals, manipulating perception to open doors to other realities. Each of these objects, the gleaming axe, the sharp spine, the dark mirror, was a key to a locked door. We can hold the key in our hands, we can admire its craftsmanship, but the specific incantations spoken, the precise sequence of actions performed, the exact visions sought, are lost. We see the instruments of their faith, but we cannot hear the music they played. This silence turns every museum case into a scene of frozen ceremony, a moment of profound connection severed from its meaning, leaving us to wonder what it truly felt like to believe that holding a piece of cold jade could let you speak with a jaguar god, or that shedding your own blood was the price of keeping the sun rising. This deep communion with the cosmos was not just painted on walls, it was engineered into the very bones of their cities. Walk the central axis of Venta today, and you tread a path laid down by architects who saw the earth as an extension of the sky. The entire ceremonial complex is a staggering feat of intentional design, aligned precisely 8 degrees west of true north. This was not a casual orientation or a result of uneven terrain. Every massive earthen mound, every open plaza, every hidden offering cache was positioned according to this grand celestial blueprint. The main pyramid, a towering fluted cone of clay, anchors the southern end of this axis, while a long, raised platform stretches northward, flanked by smaller mounds and monuments in a symmetrical arrangement that feels both majestic and meticulously calculated. This layout transforms the city into a giant observatory, a stone and earth instrument for tracking the heavens. Researchers have proposed that key sightlines between these structures align with the rising or setting sun on the solstices, those pivotal days marking the sun's farthest journey north and south. Other alignments might have tracked the cyclical path of Venus, the bright morning and evening star that held profound significance for later Mesoamerican cultures, likely inherited from Olmec predecessors. The placement of certain stone stelae and altars could have served as permanent markers, casting specific shadows or framing celestial bodies on sacred dates, turning the entire city into a participatory ritual calendar. But this interpretation is where mystery clouds certainty. The debate among archaeologists and archaeoastronomers is fierce. Skeptics argue that with so many structures and potential sightlines, some apparent alignments are bound to occur by random chance. They question whether the Olmecs possessed the precise mathematical astronomy needed for such detailed predictions, suggesting their knowledge may have been more observational and ritualistic than computational. Could the 8-degree alignment simply follow the local river or a prominent mountain peak, with any celestial correlation being a secondary, symbolic layer? Proponents counter with the sheer scale and consistency of the planning. They point to the undeniable labor involved in moving millions of cubic feet of earth to create these specific shapes and orientations, an effort too colossal to be devoid of profound intent. The discovery of buried offerings at precise points along the axis suggests a consecration of this cosmic diagram, linking the underworld, the human world, and the sky world in a single, integrated design. This is the silent argument locked in the landscape, a debate between coincidence and genius. To stand on that central axis is to feel the weight of the theory. It is almost impossible to believe such order emerged by accident. Yet, without a written manual or an Olmec astronomer's notes, we cannot prove the intent beyond doubt. The city itself is the only testament, a sprawling, enigmatic sentence written in clay and stone, describing a relationship with the cosmos so intimate that they built their holiest ground to mirror its eternal motions. The silent stones of Venta hold one final, deafening question. After centuries of shaping mountains, charting stars, and burying their gods in the earth, the Olmecs themselves vanished from the stage they had built. Sometime around 400 years before the Common Era, their great ceremonial centers fell quiet. Venta, the last bastion of their classical world, was methodically abandoned. Its monuments were not violently destroyed like those at San Lorenzo, but carefully laid to rest as if put to sleep. The people who had defined an era simply walked away, leaving no record of a final battle, no tale of exodus, and no clear grave for their civilization. Their disappearance is not a single event, but a slow fade from prominence, a puzzle with missing pieces. The leading theories point not to a sudden cataclysm, but to a slow unraveling of the world they knew. One compelling suspect is environmental change. The Olmec heartland was a landscape they had mastered, but also one they had heavily altered. Centuries of large-scale construction and agriculture may have led to severe deforestation and soil erosion. The very rivers that were their lifelines for transport and trade could have silted up, choking their economic arteries. Some evidence even suggests a major volcanic eruption in the nearby Tuxtla Mountains, which could have blanketed their fields in ash, leading to crop failure and famine over many seasons. A changing climate, a shift in rainfall patterns, could have turned their carefully managed wetlands into a place of struggle. Another possibility is internal social collapse. The Olmec system, with its powerful rulers and priestly class demanding colossal labor for monuments and offerings, may have grown too top-heavy. If the flow of prestige goods like jade was disrupted, or if the common people grew weary of the endless demands for tribute, the social contract could have frayed. The ruling elite might have lost their perceived divine mandate, especially if they could no longer ensure prosperity or predict the heavens. This wouldn't be a revolt with swords, but a quiet loss of faith, a dispersal of the population to smaller, more sustainable villages where the old gods no longer held sway. Perhaps the most enduring theory is not of an end but of a transformation. There is no archaeological evidence of a violent invasion that wiped them out. Instead, the Olmecs may have gradually assimilated into the emerging cultures that surrounded them and that they had influenced for so long, as powerful new centers like the early Zapotec city of Monte Albán in the Oaxaca Valley or the rising Maya communities to the south and east began to flourish. The Olmec heartland may have simply lost its central role. Their people, their artists, their priests, and their ideas likely migrated, blending into these new societies. The Olmec mother culture did not die. In this view, it gave birth to its children and then dissolved into them. The word jaguar motif, the ball game, the reverence for jade, and the basics of their calendar and writing systems all resurface, refined and reinvented in the classic Maya and other civilizations. This is why their disappearance feels so hauntingly incomplete. We find no mass graves, no sacked cities, no last stand. We find only empty plazas where the echoes of ceremony have faded and monuments sleeping under vines. Their legacy was immense, but their exit was a whisper. They left the stage without a final bow, leaving us to wonder if their greatest achievement was not in how they lived, but in how thoroughly they seeded the future before stepping back into the jungle from which they came. Their quiet fade from history makes their enduring presence elsewhere all the more striking. Long after La Venta's plazas fell silent, the ghost of the Olmecs walked on in the civilizations that followed. To step into a classic Maya city like Capan or Palenque centuries later is to walk into a world the Olmecs helped imagine. The evidence is etched in stone and ritual. The Maya's foundational myth, the Popol Vuh, tells of hero twins playing a sacred ball game against the gods of the underworld, a contest for the very right to exist. This game was not a Maya invention. Its earliest known courts, complete with the distinctive eye shape and rubber balls, are Olmec. At sites like San Lorenzo, stone markers called hatchers and yugos, used in the game's rituals, bear the unmistakable word jaguar snarl. The Olmecs did not just play a sport, they sanctified it, turning it into a cosmic drama of death and rebirth that the Maya would later elaborate into their most profound mythology. The spiritual imagery is just as pervasive. The Maya rain god Chok, with his curled nose and fierce aspect, seems a direct descendant of the Olmec word jaguar. The concept of divine kings, rulers who embodied gods and performed bloodletting rites to commune with ancestors, finds its earliest clear expression in Olmec art and practice. Even their artistic canon, the preference for carving in jade and the use of specific symbols like the bar and dot system for numbers, appears first in Olmec contexts before becoming pan-Mesoamerican. This influence radiates beyond the Maya world. In the highlands of Oaxaca, the early Zapotecs at Monte Albán erected stone slabs known as danzantes, figures in contorted poses. While the style is distinct, the very act of carving such monumental stone portraits of captives or elites echoes an Olmec tradition. Further north, the immense city of Teotihuacan, which rose centuries after the Olmec decline, shows echoes in its urban planning, its stepped pyramid forms, and its use of talud table row architecture, all suggesting a deep, inherited template for what a city of the gods should be. So the connection is undeniable, but its nature is the real mystery. Were the Olmecs the singular mother culture, a creative furnace from which all later Mesoamerican brilliance was cast? Or were they simply the most visible and influential early society among many peers, one node in a vast, ancient network of shared ideas? The mother culture hypothesis is compelling. It paints the Olmecs as the innovators, the first to codify the core spiritual and political concepts that would become the bedrock of the region. Their traders and emissaries, moving jade and obsidian, would have carried this cultural package with them, their prestige lending their ideas an irresistible authority. In this view, later cultures were inheritors, adapting and refining an Olmec blueprint. Critics of this idea propose a more complex mosaic. they argue for a process of mutual interaction among many early formative societies from the Oaxacan valleys to the Pacific coast. The Olmecs, with their central location and control of key trade routes, may have acted as a powerful amplifier and synthesizer, collecting ideas from a wide area, giving them spectacular artistic form, and then broadcasting them back out with greater force. They were not the sole inventors, but the great curators and enhancers of a shared, emerging Mesoamerican worldview. This debate cuts to the heart of how civilizations are born. Does progress require a catalyst, a single brilliant spark, or does it emerge from the slow, collective simmer of many minds across a continent? The Olmecs, in their magnificent silence, offer evidence for both. Their artifacts scream of unique genius, yet their motifs feel like a language that others already understood. Perhaps the truth is that they were both, a spectacular first flowering that drew its nutrients from a deep, widespread root system, and in blooming so brilliantly, they defined the garden for everyone who came after. Their greatest mystery may not be where they went, but how thoroughly they never left. That logistical genius capable of seeding ideas across a continent found its most physically daunting expression right at the beginning. To truly grasp the Olmec mind, we must return to the colossal heads, not as art, but as an engineering problem of staggering proportions. The stone itself tells a story of impossible journeys. The basalt for most of these heads did not come from a convenient local hill. It was quarried from the volcanic slopes of the Tuxtla Mountains, specifically from a site called Cerro Sintepec. On a map, that is a distance of over 50 miles from San Lorenzo, a straight line through some of the most challenging terrain in Mesoamerica, a dense mosaic of tropical forest, seasonally flooded swamps, and meandering rivers. This was not a delivery route, it was an obstacle course designed by nature. So how did they move a 20-ton block of solid rock 50 miles? This is not a trivial question, it is a core mystery of their capability. The prevailing theory is a masterful blend of simple technology and brute human force. The journey likely began at the quarry, where the rough shape of the head was carved to reduce weight. Then the real work started. The most accepted method involves a system of rollers. Workers would have felled large, straight trees, cutting them into sturdy logs. They would have levered the massive basalt block onto a wooden sled or platform, and then teams of laborers would have placed these logs in front of the sled, rolling it forward as they continuously retrieved the logs from the back and moved them to the front. It is a slow, grueling, and incredibly dangerous process, requiring perfect coordination to prevent the multi-ton stone from tipping and crushing anyone in its path. But land was only part of the puzzle. The Olmecs were masterful hydrologists, and rivers were their highways. Many scholars believe the bulk of the journey was accomplished by water. During the rainy season, when rivers swelled, they could have maneuvered the stone onto a gigantic raft made of buoyant local wood. Guiding such a precarious cargo downriver through currents and around bends would have been a feat of navigation requiring immense skill and courage. A single mistake could sink the raft and send their ruler's immortal portrait to a muddy grave at the bottom of the Coatzacoalcos. The most likely scenario is a hybrid approach, a brutal overland haul to the nearest navigable river, then a tense waterborne voyage, followed by another final overland trek to the ceremonial center. The numbers involved are humbling. Conservative estimates suggest moving just one head would require hundreds of people working in shifts for several months. They needed road clearers, log handlers, rope makers, raft builders, navigators, and coordinators shouting commands. This was not a community project, it was a state-level enterprise. It speaks of a society with the authority to commandeer a significant portion of its population for a non-agricultural task, to feed and house these workers, and to organize them with military precision. The heads, therefore, are not just portraits, they are the crystallized labor of an entire society. Every stern gaze represents thousands of days of sweat, strain, and shared purpose. The mystery is not just the how, but the why on such a scale. What belief, what social contract was powerful enough to make this Herculean effort not just possible but necessary? The silent answer lies in the mud of those ancient riverbanks, where the ghosts of 1,000 workers still strain against ropes, moving a mountain for a king they would only ever see in stone. The strain of moving mountains for their kings found its release in a game, but for the Olmecs, play was a matter of life, death, and cosmic balance. The thunderous bounce of a solid rubber ball in a ceremonial court is a sound that echoes from the very dawn of Mesoamerican civilization, and it originates with them. While the Maya and Aztecs would later build grandiose stone ball courts and elaborate the game's mythology, the Olmecs were its undeniable inventors, the ones who first infused sport with profound sacred meaning. The evidence is both tangible and chilling. From the sacred springs at El Manotti, a site of ritual offering, archaeologists have recovered several ancient rubber balls, preserved for over 3,000 years in the oxygen-poor bog. These are not crude lumps, but carefully crafted spheres, some the size of a human head, made from the processed latex of the local rubber tree. Their placement alongside precious jade celts and wooden busts tells us these were not toys but sacred objects, likely offered to the waters as part of the game's rituals. In stone, the Olmecs left even clearer records. Carvings and figurines depict players outfitted in protective gear, heavy padded belts around their waists, and sometimes protective yokes around their necks. Their poses are dynamic, leaning, reaching, poised to strike the ball with a hip or thigh, as the rules forbade the use of hands and feet. One famous figurine shows a player wearing a distinctive helmet resembling the head of a bird of prey, a clear marker of status or perhaps a team identity. But to call this merely a sport is to misunderstand its gravity entirely. The Olmec ball game was almost certainly a ritual reenactment of cosmology. The court itself represented the universe, the bouncing rubber ball the journey of the sun, or a celestial hero through the realms of the heavens and the underworld. Scoring, likely involving getting the ball through a stone ring or past a marker, would have symbolized a victory of order over chaos, of life over death. This was no friendly match, the stakes were cosmic. It is here we confront the darkest mystery of the game, its potential link to human sacrifice. Later Maya and Aztec accounts are explicit: the captain of the losing team, or sometimes even the winning captain as the ultimate offering, could be decapitated, his blood nourishing the gods to ensure the sun's rebirth. Did the Olmecs practice this lethal conclusion? The evidence is circumstantial but haunting. Several colossal heads and other stone monuments depict individuals wearing ballgame helmets, blurring the line between player and ruler. The famous Los Limas figure, a seated youth holding a jaguar infant, wears the distinct headband of a ball player. This intimate connection between the game and the highest elites suggests the outcome was a matter of divine fate, with the ruler's very body potentially on the line. It may have been a proxy for war, a way to resolve conflicts between city-states without mass battle, where the fate of a single sacred player stood in for the destiny of his entire people. Yet, for all its clear importance, a curious architectural absence deepens the mystery. At major Olmec centers like San Lorenzo and La Venta, archaeologists have not found the formal, stone-walled, eye-shaped ball courts that are iconic at later Maya sites. This implies the early Olmec game was played in open plazas with temporary markers defining the court. The game was fluid, perhaps less standardized, its rituals more integrated into the general ceremonial space than segregated into a dedicated arena. This suggests the Olmec version was the primordial root from which the more formalized, institutionalized game of the Maya grew. The lack of a permanent court does not diminish its power. It may instead reveal a time when the entire world was the court, and every game was a direct negotiation with the gods. So the Olmecs gave the world more than a sport. They gave it a sacred drama where athletes were priests, where a bouncing ball traced the path of the sun, and where the final whistle might be the last sound a king ever heard. This sacred violence was not reserved for the ball game alone, but was turned with chilling deliberation upon their own greatest works. Across the Olmec world, from San Lorenzo to La Venta, archaeologists have uncovered a pattern so consistent it cannot be accidental: the systematic defacement and burial of their monumental art. The colossal heads, those immense symbols of power, were not merely toppled, they were meticulously mutilated. Their broad noses were smashed off, their eyes and mouths carefully gouged out, their regal helmets chiseled away. This was not the random damage of invaders or the slow erosion of time. It was a focused, symbolic attack on the very essence of the image. After this ritual violence, the heads were then laid to rest with surprising care, buried in long, orderly rows as if in a cemetery for kings made of stone. The same fate befell massive stone altars and thrones, their carved surfaces deliberately broken. This presents a profound contradiction: a culture investing staggering resources to create immortal portraits, only to later blind, disfigure, and hide them. Why would they do this? The theories probe the darkest corners of power and belief. One compelling idea is ritual regicide in effigy. Upon the death of the ruler depicted, his stone counterpart had to be ritually killed to release his spirit to the afterlife, or to prevent it from lingering dangerously among the living. The mutilation, especially of the eyes and mouth, the organs of perception and command, would have severed the statue's connection to this world, a necessary step in the royal funeral process. A darker, more political interpretation is damnatio memoriae, the condemnation of memory. If a dynasty was overthrown or a ruler deemed a tyrant, his successors or a rebellious populace might systematically erase his legacy. By defacing his monuments, they were not just destroying stone, they were rewriting history, attempting to annihilate his presence from the collective memory of the people. Yet another perspective views this as a ceremonial retirement. Sacred objects, like living beings, might have been believed to possess a life force or a sacred charge that could wear out or become unstable over time. Once a monument had served its purpose for a generation or two, it might need to be decommissioned, its power neutralized through controlled damage before being respectfully interred, returned to the earth from which it came. This practice transforms the archaeological record into a palimpsest of intentional mystery. Each buried head is a puzzle with two sides, a celebration of a life and a record of its deliberate cancellation. It forces us to wonder about the emotional landscape of the Olmecs, a people capable of both profound reverence and calculated iconoclasm. Were these acts performed with solemn piety, with revolutionary fury, or with a pragmatic understanding of spiritual hygiene? The silent, scarred faces offer no answer, only the certainty that for the Olmecs, creation and destruction were two sides of the same sacred coin. The deliberate scarring of stone monuments reveals a culture deeply attuned to unseen forces, a sensitivity that may have extended to powers hidden within the earth itself. Among the most tantalizing and anachronistic of all Olmec finds are objects that suggest a startling awareness of a fundamental force of nature: magnetism. At San Lorenzo, archaeologists uncovered a polished bar of hematite, an iron oxide mineral that carried a persistent magnetic charge. This was not a random piece of ore, it was a carefully crafted artifact, and its magnetic poles were aligned with its long axis. Other sites have yielded similar objects: small, polished lodestones or figurines with localized magnetic fields. The implication is staggering. The Olmecs, over 3,000 years ago, not only recognized that certain stones possessed this strange, invisible pull, but they also learned to identify and even manipulate their polarity. The discovery itself is a quiet marvel. Imagine an Olmec artisan polishing a piece of dark hematite when they notice it tugging gently at a sliver of iron or another lodestone. They would have felt the repulsion when one end was brought near another, and the attraction when flipped. This was not lightning or sunlight, it was a steady, mysterious force residing within the rock itself, a piece of the earth that seemed alive with silent energy. The question of how they first stumbled upon this phenomenon is open to speculation. Perhaps while polishing iron-rich minerals for mirrors or pigments, they observed the persistent attraction of metallic dust. What is certain is that they took note and they saw purpose in it. But what did they use this knowledge for? The applications are as mysterious as the discovery. One compelling theory is ritual and divination. A magnetized bar suspended on a string or floated on water would align itself with the Earth's magnetic field, much like a compass. For a people who oriented their entire cities to celestial events, such a self-moving stone would have seemed profoundly magical, a direct conduit to the world's hidden order. It could have been used by shamans to find auspicious directions for ceremonies, to communicate with spiritual forces, or to reveal hidden truths. Another possibility is architectural. While the grand alignments at Venta are celestial, the precise placement of some offerings or the orientation of lesser structures might have been guided or verified using these magnetic stones, linking their earthly constructions to the planet's own invisible grid. There is also the simple yet profound use as a demonstration of power. A ruler or priest who could make stones move without touching them, who could command this invisible force, would wield immense symbolic authority. The lodestone would be a physical proof of their connection to the supernatural fabric of the world. This fragment of knowledge feels jarringly out of time. We are accustomed to thinking of magnetism as a later scientific discovery, yet here it is, in the hands of America's first great civilization. It forces us to radically reconsider the depth of their experimentation and observation. They were not just artists and builders, they were early natural philosophers probing the properties of their world with a curious and meticulous eye. They asked questions of stones and paid attention to the answers, no matter how subtle. This single magnetized bar is a testament to a lost chapter in the history of inquiry, a quiet experiment in a jungle workshop that recognized one of the universe's fundamental forces long before the rest of the world had a name for it. It suggests that their genius was not confined to the monumental, but flourished in the minute, in the careful study of a pebble that could, against all visible logic, reach out and pull another world toward it. That same invisible force of magnetism, a potential tool of power, leads us directly to the most human mystery of all, who held the reins. While we can marvel at their engineering and decipher their cosmic alignments, the faces of Olmec power remain frustratingly anonymous. Unlike the later Maya, whose stone stelae proudly name kings like Jasor-Chan Kawil and record their deeds, the Olmec world offers no such royal roster. We are left with a gallery of stone portraits without captions, a court of silent giants whose names are lost to the jungle humidity. The colossal heads are our most tantalizing clue. Their individualized features, from stern frowns to calm, knowing gazes, and their unique helmet-like headdresses strongly suggest they are portraits of specific, powerful individuals. The sheer effort required to create them implies these were not just important people, but paramount leaders, perhaps rulers whose authority demanded immortalization in basalt. Yet without a single accompanying glyph saying, "This is King so and so," we cannot move from strong suspicion to certain fact. Are they a lineage of fathers and sons, a dynasty carved in stone? Or do they represent a council of elders or high priests from different city-states, their heads gathered in a symbolic display of collective rule? The stone gives no answer. Further clues come from the rare and rich burials that have been uncovered. At sites like Venta, elite tombs, though uncommon, contain staggering wealth. One famous burial held the remains of 2 children, accompanied by a treasure trove of jade ornaments and figurines, all laid upon a platform of shimmering serpentine blocks. This was not a simple grave, it was a statement of supreme status, likely for offspring of the ruling line. The presence of such opulence in death tells us that Olmec society was sharply hierarchical, with a small elite commanding the labor and resources to create these monuments and to take such riches with them into the afterlife. The iconography of power is everywhere, but it is symbolic, not personal. Rulers are depicted in carvings seated in niches that resemble cave entrances, emerging from the underworld, a visual claim to divine ancestry. They hold ceremonial bars, wear elaborate headdresses of birds and jaguars, and are often shown in the act of ritual, perhaps bloodletting. These are the trappings of office, the uniform of a sacred king, but they do not tell us which individual wore that uniform. This absence fuels a central debate about the very nature of Olmec governance. Were they ruled by singular, godlike kings, individuals whose personal charisma and claimed descent from the word jaguar ancestor justified their absolute authority? The heads and rich child burials support this idea of a powerful, centralized monarchy. Or was power more diffused, held by a council of priest chiefs who shared authority? A theocracy where religious knowledge, not just lineage, determined leadership. The lack of obvious royal palaces, as distinct from temple complexes, could hint at this more collective, spiritually focused rule. Perhaps the truth lies in between, a system where a supreme ruler existed, but was deeply embedded within and constrained by a powerful priestly class who interpreted the will of the gods. The political history of their civilization is a complete blank slate. We see the rise of San Lorenzo and its violent fall, the shift of power to Venta, but we have no idea if this was a peaceful succession, a civil war, or the triumph of one royal family over another. Were the Olmec cities united under a single empire, or were they independent city-states, sometimes allied, sometimes rivals, sharing a culture but competing for power? The silent stones offer evidence for all possibilities. This is the profound silence at the heart of their mystery. We can reconstruct their technology, map their trade, and interpret their gods, but we cannot write a single page of their political history. We do not know the name of the king who ordered the first colossal head, or the priest who consecrated the Great Pyramid at Venta. Their social pyramid is clear in its shape, but every name on its ascending tiers has been erased. We are left with a magnificent civilization whose greatest leaders are known only by the shadows they cast in stone, rulers who commanded the movement of mountains but could not leave us the simplest of inscriptions, their own names. Even the names of their kings are lost to the silent weight of those buried stones, and no stones are more silent or more heavy than the ones they chose to hide. We must return to Venta, to the very foundation of their last great capital, to confront a mystery not of absence but of deliberate, extravagant concealment. Scattered beneath the plazas and mounds are features known simply as the massive offerings. The name does not do them justice. Picture a vast rectangular pit dug deep into the earth. Inside, workers laid down a floor not of dirt but of nearly 1,000 tons of carefully cut and polished serpentine blocks. Each greenstone block was shaped, fitted tightly against its neighbor, creating a perfect, shimmering carpet of stone measuring over 45 feet long. On top of this impossible floor, they layered different colored clays, stripes of red, yellow, and purple, before finally burying the entire construction under tons of earth, sealing it away for eternity. This was not a one-time event. Multiple massive offerings were created across the site, alongside countless smaller caches of jade and precious objects. The labor calculation is staggering. To quarry, shape, transport, and lay those 1,000 tons of serpentine, a stone not found locally, would have required the coordinated effort of hundreds, perhaps thousands of people working for months or even years. And all this for something whose entire purpose was to be unseen, to be forgotten the moment the last shovel of dirt was thrown. Why would a society, even a wealthy one, pour so much of its vitality into a hole in the ground? This act of buried wealth is one of the Olmecs' most profound and perplexing statements. One dominant interpretation sees it as the ultimate foundational offering. Before erecting a temple or a pyramid, the Olmecs may have believed they needed to appease and nourish the deities of the earth itself, the powerful forces that lived in the soil and the underworld. The serpentine blocks, with their green color evoking water and life, and the colored clays representing different layers of reality, were a permanent gift, a payment to the earth for the right to build upon it. In this view, the massive offerings were a kind of spiritual anchor, driven deep into the ground to stabilize their sacred city and tether it to the cosmic order. Another theory views them as cosmograms, physical models of the Olmec universe. The layered stones and clays could represent the stratified worlds, the underworld, the earthly realm, and the heavens, all compressed into a single, buried diagram. By creating this microcosm and planting it at the heart of their city, they were symbolically aligning Venta with the structure of all creation, making their home a true axis mundi, the center of the world. There is also a compelling social and political reading. This could be an extreme form of competitive generosity, or what anthropologists call a wealth display. Ruling elites in a society without coined money demonstrate their power not by hoarding treasure, but by publicly destroying or removing it from circulation. By orchestrating the burial of 1,000 tons of precious stone, a leader was performing his supreme authority. He was proving that his control over labor and resources was so absolute, he could literally throw a fortune into the earth for a spiritual dividend that only he could claim to access. It was a power move written in soil and stone, a way to humble rivals and awe the populace. Yet the true, specific symbolism is as buried as the offerings themselves. Were they maps of a mythical paradise? Were they giant seedbeds planted with stone to ensure the city would grow and flourish? Or were they the Olmec equivalent of a time capsule, meant not for us but for gods or ancestors in a distant future? The sheer scale of the labor tells us this was not a casual ritual. It was central to their survival and identity. It speaks of a world where the invisible underpinnings of reality were just as important, perhaps more so, than the visible monuments above. They built their pyramids to scrape the sky, but first they bought the land from the gods below, with an offering so vast its meaning may be forever beyond our reach. Buried wealth was their offering to the earth, but at a place called El Azuzul, they left a gift for the ages above ground. In a quiet corner of the Olmec world, near the site of San Lorenzo, archaeologists unearthed a grouping so perfect and so strange it seems less like a sculpture and more like a moment frozen in time. Two life-sized figures carved from dark basalt sit side by side on a low platform. They are young men, nearly identical, with serene, downcast eyes and hands resting gently on their knees. Their posture is one of perfect calm, of patient waiting, and standing watchfully behind them, facing the same direction, is a third figure, this one unmistakably feline, a sleek, stylized jaguar poised as if guarding the pair. This is not a collection of separate artifacts, but a single, deliberate tableau, a rare narrative scene from a civilization that usually speaks in singular, powerful icons. The mystery of El Azuzul is the mystery of the story we are witnessing but cannot understand. Who are these twins, and what is their relationship to the silent jaguar sentinel? The most tantalizing theory connects them directly to a myth that would echo for millennia. Centuries later, the Maya would tell the Popol Vuh, the story of the hero twins, divine brothers who descended into the terrifying underworld to challenge the gods of death through wit and skill, ultimately paving the way for the dawn of humanity. The Olmecs, as the probable originators of the Mesoamerican ball game which reenacted this cosmic drama, could very well be showing us the first depiction of these legendary twins. In this reading, the jaguar behind them is not a mere animal, but a spiritual guardian or a manifestation of their own transformative power, the feline strength they must harness for their journey. The scene captures a moment of quiet preparation before the descent into darkness. Yet they might not be gods at all, but deified rulers. The Olmecs, like many ancient cultures, may have held twins in special regard, seeing them as embodiments of duality and sacred power. These could be portraits of actual twin brothers who ruled together, a rare political arrangement immortalized in stone. Their identical, serene faces project an aura of harmonious, shared authority. The jaguar, then, could symbolize their patron deity or their claimed descent from the word jaguar ancestor, a stone heraldic beast proclaiming their divine right to rule. A third possibility sees them as guardian deities themselves, perhaps ancestral spirits or protectors of a specific place or lineage, forever seated in watchful vigilance with their feline companion. Their ritual context deepens the enigma. They were found in situ exactly as they were left, suggesting this grouping was the focal point of a shrine. Were they recipients of offerings, silent witnesses to bloodletting rites performed before them? Did initiates sit before them during ceremonies of passage? Their downcast eyes are particularly haunting. They do not engage the viewer, but seem focused on an inner vision or a sacred space directly before them, directing attention to a ritual ground now lost. This unique composition is a gift and a frustration. It is one of the few Olmec artworks that clearly shows a relationship between figures, that implies a story with characters and a potential sequence. It feels like a page from a book, but without the accompanying text, the page is blank. We see the characters, we sense the tension and the calm, but the plot is a silence stretching over 3,000 years. The twins of El Azuzul hold the secret of a story that may be the root of a continent's greatest myth, or the private history of two forgotten kings. They wait, as they have always waited, for an audience that can finally understand their silent stone dialogue. That silent dialogue of stone twins hints at a mind capable of holding profound dualities, a quality that may have led to one of humanity's most revolutionary abstract thoughts. Among the Olmecs' most enduring legacies is not a monument but a concept, the idea of nothing as a number. The invention of zero stands as one of the great intellectual leaps in human history, a placeholder that transforms mathematics from simple counting into a powerful tool for calculation and philosophy. For centuries, the credit was given to Indian mathematicians around the 5th century of the Common Era. But the story in the Americas may be far older, and its roots may lie with the Olmecs. The evidence is not written in a textbook, but encoded in their architecture and perhaps in their earliest attempts at writing. The strongest argument comes from their greatest intellectual achievement, the long count calendar. This was a system for tracking vast cycles of time, a linear chronology that counted the days from a mythical starting point. Such a system is impossible without a symbol for zero, a way to mark the absence of a value in a given place, to distinguish day 206 from day 260. While the classic Maya later perfected this calendar and used a shell glyph to explicitly represent zero, the foundational structure was an Olmec creation. The very need for the long count implies the conceptual understanding of zero as a placeholder, a silent engine in the machinery of their cosmic clock. A more tangible, though fiercely debated, piece of evidence is the La Mojara Stela. This tall stone slab, dating to the 2nd century of the Common Era from a culture heavily influenced by the Olmecs, bears one of the longest examples of an early Mesoamerican script. Among its intricate glyphs, some scholars believe they see the bar and dot numerical system, including a symbol that could represent zero, used to record dates in the long count. If this interpretation is correct, it pushes the documented use of a zero symbol in the Americas back centuries earlier than previously confirmed, and points directly back to the Olmec intellectual tradition from which the calendar sprang. The profundity of this cannot be overstated. To conceive of zero is to grasp a staggering abstraction. It is not merely emptiness or the absence of things, which any child understands, but the formalization of that absence into a quantity that can be used in calculation. It is the recognition that nothing is something worth counting. How did this emerge in the jungles of Mexico, seemingly independent of the old world? The mystery lies in the unique demands of their cosmology. A people obsessed with cyclical time, with tracking the precise movements of celestial bodies across epochs. needed a mathematics capable of handling large numbers and positional notation. Their vision of time as a series of nested cycles, like wheels within wheels, likely necessitated the invention. It may have grown organically from the practical needs of their calendar keepers, those priest astronomers who watched the sky and carved dates into stone. This independent invention shatters a linear narrative of human progress. It tells us that the capacity for this supreme abstraction existed in multiple cradles of civilization, that the Olmec mind, while cut off from the genius of India or Babylon, arrived at the same breathtaking cliff edge of thought and jumped. Their zero was not a digit on a page, but a philosophical tool, a way to give shape to the void between cosmic cycles, to give a number to the silence before creation. In that silence, they found one of the loudest ideas in history. That profound abstraction of zero finds a startlingly vivid counterpart in a splash of color. On the walls of their sacred caves and on fragments of precious artifacts, the Olmecs left traces of a pigment so unique it bears their name, Olmec blue. This is not the famous Maya blue of later centuries, but its mysterious, possibly ancestral cousin, a vibrant hue that has stubbornly clung to stone for over 3 millennia. Its discovery is a quiet revelation in a world often defined by monochrome stone, a whisper of how brilliantly colored their sacred spaces might have been. Yet this splash of color is itself a locked box containing twin mysteries, one of chemistry and one of the soul. The technical puzzle is immediate and profound. Modern analysis reveals Olmec blue is a complex synthetic pigment. It was not simply dug from the ground as a ready-made mineral, but carefully manufactured by ancient artisans through a sophisticated process. The base is a unique clay mineral, but the key to its striking azure tone and its legendary durability is the incorporation of indigo, an organic dye derived from the leaves of the indigo plant. The Olmecs had to master the chemistry of binding this fragile organic dye with inorganic clay particles through a process likely involving precise heating to create a color that could survive the humidity of the jungle and the passage of centuries. This was not child's play, it was advanced material science. The recipe, the exact temperatures, the specific clay sources, and the ritual knowledge required to make it are all lost. Even more intriguing is how it differs from the later, more widespread Maya blue. While they share a similar concept, their chemical signatures are distinct, suggesting either a different technical tradition or a recipe that evolved and was perfected over time. The Olmec version stands as a prototype, a brilliant first draft of a color technology that would become a hallmark of Mesoamerican civilization. But the greater mystery is why they went to such trouble. In a world without synthetic dyes, color was power, and a color this vibrant and permanent was undoubtedly sacred. Everywhere this blue appears, it speaks of the divine. In the cave of Juxtlahuaca, it adorns figures in ritual procession. On pottery and perhaps on the walls of temples now vanished, it would have glowed with an otherworldly light. The likely associations are profound, the blue of deep, life-giving water, from the sacred springs they revered to the rain-bringing storms. It is the blue of the sky dome, the realm of celestial gods and the path of the sun. By wearing this pigment or painting with it, priests and rulers may have been wrapping themselves in the very essence of these elemental forces, becoming living embodiments of fertility and the heavens. This small, technical achievement thus opens a window into their perceptual world. Olmec blue was more than a paint, it was a captured piece of the cosmos, a technological prayer made manifest. Its loss is a double tragedy. We have forgotten both the hand that could mix it and the exact hymn it was meant to illustrate. In that lingering stain on a cave wall, we see the ghost of a color that once made the invisible vividly real. The color blue captured the sky, but on the ground at Venta, they laid down a puzzle in green stone. Deep beneath the surface of the great ceremonial plaza, archaeologists uncovered one of the most spectacular artworks of the ancient world, not a statue but a floor. It was a vast pavement, a mosaic measuring over 15 feet across, constructed from nearly 500 finely cut blocks of serpentine. Each stone was a pixel in a grand design, and when viewed from above, the arrangement was unmistakable. The snarling, stylized face of a jaguar mask, its geometric eyes and gaping maw staring up from the darkness. This was not a hidden offering of raw material, but a deliberate, monumental image, a masterpiece created only to be immediately entombed. The animal mosaic presents a mystery of breathtaking scale and profound contradiction, a public artwork with no public, a message written in stone for an audience that was never meant to be human. Its purpose is a riddle wrapped in layers of sacred intent. One compelling theory sees it as a giant ritual tableau, a stage for ceremonies performed directly above it. Priests or rulers standing on a temporary platform over the buried mosaic would have been literally acting upon the visage of the jaguar god, their rituals amplified by the powerful symbol beneath their feet. Every step, every offering would have resonated with the energy of the earth and the spirit of the beast. Another interpretation views it as a cosmogram, a map of the Olmec universe. The jaguar, as a creature of the night and the underworld, could represent that subterranean realm, while the stone plaza above symbolized the human world. The mosaic placed between them was a permanent interface, a charged boundary where the two planes met. This leads to the most tantalizing idea of all, that it was meant to be seen but not by mortal eyes. The sheer scale and precision of the design, best appreciated from a vantage point high above the ground, suggests it could have been intended for celestial viewers, for gods or ancestors looking down from the sky. In this reading, the mosaic was a sacred sign, a beacon of devotion planted in the earth for divine beings to recognize. Yet, the deepest part of the mystery is not its creation, but its immediate fate. Soon after this staggering investment of labor and artistry was complete, the Olmecs carefully covered it with layers of colored clay and soil, sealing it away. Why create something so magnificent only to hide it forever? This act of burial is the key to its meaning. It transforms the mosaic from a display into a seed. By planting this jaguar mask into the earth, they were performing a potent act of sympathetic magic, embedding the generative, protective, and fearsome power of the jaguar spirit into the very foundations of their city. It was not a painting for a gallery, but a battery for spiritual energy, charged and then buried to radiate its power invisibly, sustaining the sacred order of Venta from below. The mosaic becomes a permanent, hidden engine of the cosmos, its growl silent but its influence perpetual. This hidden artwork screams of a symbolic language we can only partially decipher. It tells us that for the Olmecs, meaning was not always meant to be openly displayed, that their most important communications with the divine were often conducted in secret, in the language of buried treasure and concealed icons. The jaguar mask mosaic is a sentence in that language, written in green stone and addressed to the earth itself. We can see the words, we can admire the grammar of its arrangement, but the specific incantation it was meant to trigger is lost. It stands as a testament to a world view where the most real things were often the ones you could never see, a civilization that built its identity not just on pyramids that touched the sky, but on secrets planted deep in the dark, fertile ground. Buried secrets and local genius, however, cannot fully explain the objects that show up in the strangest places. The Olmec world, it turns out, was far bigger than the jungles of the Gulf Coast. Scattered across ancient Mexico and beyond are artifacts that trace lines on a map, lines that stretch for hundreds of miles, connecting the Olmec heartland to distant and surprising places. This is the mystery of their horizons, a puzzle of how far their reach truly extended and what form that influence took. The evidence is in the stones themselves. Take the polished iron ore mirrors made from magnetite or hematite. The closest known sources for these specific high-quality ores are not in Olmec territory, but in the state of Guerrero, over 250 miles to the southwest across rugged mountains. Similarly, small, polished cubes of the mineral ilmenite found in Olmec offerings come from sources even farther away. These were not bulk trade goods but precious ritual items. Their presence tells us that Olmec traders or their partners were making incredibly long, difficult journeys to acquire very specific materials for their elite and their gods. But it is not just what they brought in, it is what they sent out. In the highlands of central Mexico, at a site like Tlatilco, archaeologists have uncovered pottery and figurines that scream Olmec style, from the classic baby face with its jaguar snarl to the dynamic poses of ball players. These objects appear hundreds of miles from San Lorenzo, in communities with their own distinct culture. On the Pacific coast of Guatemala, at sites like Tacalic-Abaj, Olmec-style carvings and motifs appear alongside later Maya developments, suggesting a lasting impression in a region rich in the jade they so coveted. So what do these distant fingerprints mean? Was this an Olmec empire with colonies and governors ruling over subject peoples? The evidence for outright military conquest or political control is thin. There are no obvious Olmec fortresses in these distant lands, no signs of a sudden, violent replacement of local culture. A more persuasive idea is a vast and sophisticated trade network, a web of exchange where Olmec goods and craftsmen traveled alongside raw materials. In this view, Olmec-style objects were prestige goods, items of such exotic power and beauty that local elites far away wanted to own them, and perhaps even commission local artisans to copy their styles, to associate themselves with the sophistication and spiritual authority of the Gulf Coast masters. This could have been a purely economic relationship, but with the Olmecs, nothing was ever purely economic. Their goods were soaked in meaning, which leads to another compelling theory, the missionary model. Perhaps Olmec influence spread not through armies but through ideology. Their traders might have been accompanied by priests or storytellers, spreading the compelling cosmology of the word jaguar, the sacred ball game, and the rituals of blood and renewal. Local chiefs adopting these new symbols and rituals could have used them to bolster their own power, wrapping themselves in the spiritual prestige of the Olmec world. The Olmecs may have offered a complete package, a way of seeing the universe that came with a stunning artistic style, and it proved irresistibly attractive to emerging leaders across Mesoamerica. The map, then, is not one of an empire with clear borders, but a radiating field of influence, strongest at the center and fading at the edges. Near the heartland, the impact was profound, perhaps involving direct settlement or political alliance. Further out, it became a matter of selective adoption, where local cultures picked and chose the Olmec ideas that resonated with them, blending them with their own traditions. This is why the question marks on the map are so persistent. Each distant Olmec-style object is an ambassador without instructions. Was it brought by an Olmec traveler, traded by a middleman, or made by a local artist imitating a style they had heard was powerful? The network was clearly real, but its conversations are lost. We see the objects that moved, but we cannot hear the deals that were struck, the myths that were told, or the reasons a leader in central Mexico decided that being depicted with an Olmec jaguar mask was the key to his authority. This expansive mystery forces us to see the Olmecs not as an isolated fountainhead, but as the most active node in an ancient internet, broadcasting a powerful signal that shaped the cultural landscape of an entire continent for 1,000 years before their own cities fell silent. That sprawling network of influence may have vanished, but its echoes never fully faded from the land. Our final mystery brings us out of the silent past and into the living present, asking a question that bridges 3,000 years. Do any of the modern indigenous peoples of Mexico carry a direct cultural or linguistic inheritance from the Olmecs? Is it possible that fragments of this mother civilization survive, not just in buried stone, but in the stories, words, and rituals of people today? This is not an archaeological puzzle, but an ethnographic one, a search for a ghost in the heartbeat of contemporary communities. The most compelling clue lies in the realm of language. Linguists have long proposed a fascinating hypothesis that the Olmecs spoke a very early form of a language family known as Mix-Zoquian. This family includes languages spoken today by the Mix and Zoque peoples who inhabit territories in the states of Veracruz, Oaxaca, and Chiapas, regions that overlap significantly with the ancient Olmec heartland and its zones of influence. The argument is based on a powerful piece of evidence: the widespread distribution of loanwords, words borrowed from one language into many others. Across many unrelated Mesoamerican languages, from Maya to Nahuatl, the words for fundamental cultural items like cacao, the sacred chocolate bean, and for words related to the rubber used in the ball game appear to have roots in the Mix-Zoquian family. This suggests that the people who spoke this ancestral language were the primary disseminators, the original innovators, of these crucial concepts and commodities. Who, in the formative period of Mesoamerican history, was in a position to spread such fundamental words across such a vast area? The Olmecs, as the earliest dominant civilization and traders, are the perfect candidates. If this theory holds, then the modern Mix and Zoque languages could be the living, breathing descendants of the tongue spoken by the carvers of the colossal heads. Every conversation in a village market, every lullaby sung today, might carry a faint phonetic shadow of Olmec speech. Beyond linguistics, the search turns to folklore and tradition. In the mist-shrouded highlands where the Mix people live, there are stories and practices that resonate with ancient Olmec themes. The Mix are known for their profound reverence for earth and mountain deities, for complex agricultural rituals tied to the cycles of rain and maize, and for a spiritual worldview where the natural world is intensely alive with sacred power. These are broad Mesoamerican concepts, but their particular intensity in this region invites speculation. Could the deep-seated veneration of the earth, so clear in the Olmec's buried offerings, have found a continuous home here? Some anthropologists point to specific artistic motifs. The stunning textiles woven by the Zoque women, for example, feature geometric patterns of stepped frets and spirals that bear a striking, though abstract, resemblance to designs found on Olmec pottery and carvings. Is this a preserved aesthetic memory passed down through countless generations of artisans, or simply a convergent evolution of pattern born from a shared landscape? The question is tantalizingly difficult to prove. 3 millennia is an ocean of time filled with conquest, migration, and cultural blending. The Spanish colonization alone wrought catastrophic changes, deliberately suppressing indigenous languages and beliefs. Any direct line from the Olmecs to the present would be a thread worn incredibly thin, woven into a much larger and more complex tapestry of survival and adaptation. The modern Mix and Zoque cultures are vibrant, distinct entities in their own right, not living museums of an Olmec past. Yet, the possibility of a deep, substratal connection remains a powerful idea. It suggests that the Olmec civilization did not end with the abandonment of Venta. Instead, its people likely dispersed, their languages evolving, their beliefs merging with those of their neighbors, their bloodlines blending into the wider population of the region. Their legacy, therefore, may not be a single preserved custom, but a foundational layer in the cultural geology of Mesoamerica. To listen to a Mix elder speak or to watch a Zoque weaver at her loom is to witness the latest chapter in a story that began with the first stone head raised in a clearing. The final mystery, then, is not one of extinction but of transformation. It asks us to look at the living faces of Mexico's indigenous peoples and wonder if, in the cadence of a word or the turn of a design, we are hearing the faintest echo of America's first great civilization, still whispering its secrets on the wind. We have walked with giants carved from stone and listened for whispers in a script no one can read. From the sudden spark of their origin to their quiet fade into the jungle, the Olmecs built a civilization that stands as a monumental question mark in human history. Their 25 enduring mysteries are not gaps in knowledge, but the very architecture of their legacy. We marvel at the colossal heads, yet we do not know the kings they portray. We decipher the alignments of their cities, but we cannot hear the prayers spoken there. We hold the cascadal block, a promise of language, in hands that will never turn its page. For every staggering achievement, there is a profound silence. Their true names, their daily lives, the final fate of their people, all remain wrapped in the humid air of the Gulf Coast. This is the essence of the Olmec enigma, a reminder that some of history's most powerful stories are told not in the clarity of answers, but in the haunting beauty of the unanswered. They challenge us to be comfortable with wonder, to find meaning in the search itself. So we turn the question to you: which of these 25 mysteries captures your imagination the most? Is it the purpose of the buried mosaics, the secret of the magnetized bars, or the silent story of the stone twins at El Azuzul? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. If you are captivated by this journey into the deep past, subscribe for more explorations into the world's greatest historical puzzles. The Olmec's greatest gift may be this: they teach us that curiosity is the true compass through time, and that sometimes the most important thing a civilization can leave behind is not a solution, but a riddle that forever sparks the human mind to